Gentlemen, my daughter needs a lesson in respect. I am selling her to the highest bidder. In 1875, in a dusty saloon in Paradise, Nevada, a father dragged his own daughter onto an auction block and sold her like cattle. Zara Adams was 20 years old. Her crime? Refusing to marry the men her father chose, trying to escape to her aunt in San Francisco. The bids climbed higher. $50, $100, $200, old men with hungry eyes fighting over a woman's future. Then a stranger's voice cut through the crowd. $500! A cowboy no one had ever seen before tossed a leather pouch of gold coins onto the stage and bought her freedom. But here's what no one expected. Not Zara, not the crowd, not even her father. The first thing the stranger asked wasn't, "What can you do for me?" He asked, "Where to?" Two words that changed everything. This is the story of a woman sold by the man who should have protected her and saved by a stranger who wanted nothing but to see her free. The lesson. Your worth is never determined by those who try to sell you short. Sometimes the person who changes your life forever is someone you haven't even met yet. And freedom isn't given, it's chosen. If this story moved you, leave a comment and tell me, what would you have done in Zara's place? Like, share with someone who needs to hear this today, and subscribe so you never miss a story about women who refuse to be owned. The sound of the gavel striking wood cut through the saloon's afternoon clamor, making the whole place go quiet. There, in Paradise, Nevada, a man named Zachariah Adams stood on a platform they'd thrown together, his knuckles white from gripping his daughter's arm. Zara Adams, all of 20 years old with hair the color of wild honey and defiant green eyes, stared straight ahead. She refused to give any of the gawking men the satisfaction of meeting their gaze on that blistering July day in 1875. Zachariah's voice boomed, "Gentlemen, my daughter here needs a lesson in respect. She has turned down 3 good men, sneaks out at all hours, and just yesterday I found her trying to get on a train headed east. For 20 years I have put a roof over her head and clothes on her back, and this is how she repays me." He gave Zara a rough pull forward. "So I am selling her to the man with the highest bid. She comes with nothing but what she is wearing, and a stubborn streak that needs breaking." Zara's chest felt tight with a rage so hot it could burn, but she kept her mouth shut. She knew better than to speak. Her father had dragged her into town straight from their home the moment he discovered her packed bags. She had been making a break for San Francisco, where her mother's sister lived. That woman had built a life for herself without any husband telling her what to do. That was the life Zara wanted, not to be married off like livestock to one of her father's partners, just to make him look better in town. "Do I hear $50? Zachariah hollered. A low rumble of voices moved through the crowd. A few men chuckled, figuring it was all a big show. Others, though, leaned in, their interest piqued. "50!" called out a gray-haired rancher who had to be 60 if he was a day. "75!" another man yelled, a heavy-set fella with tobacco-stained teeth who ran the butcher shop. Zara felt a knot twist in her stomach. This could not be real. Not in 1875. Not in a place that was supposed to be part of the United States. But her father had powerful friends in Paradise, and that included the town sheriff, who was just watching from a corner with his arms crossed, a troubled look on his face. 150, yelled the butcher. 200, came a bid from a miner with hands as rough as bark and a hungry look in his eyes. The numbers kept climbing, and Zara could feel tears starting to well up. She blinked them back with all her might. She would not let her father or any of these men see her break. $500. The voice that spoke was deep and steady, a voice no one there recognized. The crowd seemed to part like the Red Sea as a tall man walked toward the platform. He wore dust-covered boots, old denim pants, and a navy shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his tanned forearms. A brown Stetson was pulled down low, hiding his eyes. He came to a stop right in front of the stage and looked up. 500, he said again, his gaze locking with Zachariah's. Zachariah's eyes got a little wider at the amount, Then they narrowed with suspicion. "Do I know you, stranger?" "Name is Wade Lawrence. Just passing through." He tossed a leather pouch onto the stage. The heavy clink of gold coins echoed in the now completely silent saloon. Zachariah tore it open and counted the money with greedy haste before giving a sharp nod. "Sold." He gave Zara a hard shove that almost sent her falling right off the platform. But the stranger, Wade, reached out and caught her arm. His grip was strong, but it did not hurt the way her father's had. "You will thank me for this someday, girl," Zachariah spat, not even bothering to look at his daughter as he stuffed the gold into his pocket. "Maybe this will teach you your place." Zara's voice, when it finally came, was clear and cold. "My place is my own to make. It is not with you, and it is certainly not with any man who thinks he can buy a person like a head of cattle." Wade's hand tightened just a bit on her arm, a silent signal. She could see his eyes now. They were a brilliant blue, a stark contrast to his sun-weathered skin. He did not look much older than 25 or 26. "Your things?" he asked, his voice low. "I have nothing," she shot back, "just like my father so kindly announced." Wade gave a single nod, and then began guiding her toward the saloon doors. The crowd moved aside for them once more, some men looking let down, others looking entertained. Zara caught one last glimpse of the sheriff. The man at least had the decency to look ashamed of himself before he turned his gaze away. The Nevada sun was a merciless force outside. Wade led her to a beautiful dapple gray horse tied to the hitching rail. "Get on up," he said, making a step with his hands for her to use. Zara just stared at him. "And why would I go anywhere with you? You just bought me as if I were a piece of furniture." "Would you rather I leave you here with your father?" Wade asked. His face was impossible to read under the shadow of his hat. She thought about it for a second, glancing back at the saloon. No, she definitely did not want that. "I want to go to San Francisco," she declared. "I have an aunt who lives there." Wade looked at her for a long, quiet moment before asking a simple question. "Where to?" The words threw her off balance. He was not ordering her to come with him. He was not acting like he owned her. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice cautious. "I mean exactly what I said. Where is it you want to go?" "You said San Francisco. That is a mighty long ride from here." Zara's brow furrowed, and her anger started to give way to pure confusion. "Why on earth would you spend $500 just to let me decide where I go?" A small smile barely touched Wade's lips. "Let's just say I have my reasons. Now, are you going to get on this horse, or do you want to stand here until your father comes out and finds you?" That settled it for her. Zara put her foot into his offered hands and let him help her into the saddle. Wade swung up behind her like he had been born on a horse, and one arm settled around her waist to hold the reins. She immediately went stiff. "I am not going to hurt you," he said quietly, his voice right next to her ear. "But we ought to put some miles between us and your father before he sobers up and starts thinking about what just happened." And with that, he made a soft clicking sound, and the horse started off at a steady pace, leaving the town of Paradise and her father far behind. Zara did not look back, not even once. She kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, her mind a whirlwind of questions. Who was this man? Why had he stepped in? And what in the world did he really want with her? They rode for the better part of an hour without a word between them, surrounded by the endless stretch of the desert. The sun was starting to dip toward the west when Wade finally pulled the horse to a stop next to a little creek. "We will rest for a bit," he announced, swinging down from the saddle and then offering a hand to help her. Zara was too proud to take his help. She slid down from the horse on her own, her legs feeling unsteady as they touched the earth. She had not been on a horse in years, not since her mother had passed away. Her father had sold her mother's favorite mare the very next day. "You are not from around Paradise," she stated, watching Wade lead the horse to the water's edge. "I would have recognized you." "No, ma'am," he agreed. "I am not. I am..." I've been pushing cattle between Texas and Nevada these last few years. I brought a herd over to a spread just outside of Paradise yesterday evening. But that hardly explains what you were doing in that saloon right then, or why you'd spend $500 on a woman you have never met. Wade lifted his hat from his head, showing a crop of thick dark hair that curled just a bit over his collar. He ran his fingers through it once before settling the hat back in place. I heard some chatter in town this morning, he said, his jaw going tight, about a man looking to sell off his own daughter. I figured it was just tall talk until I walked in and saw it with my own eyes. No man has the right to sell another soul, not his daughter, not anybody. The way he said it felt personal, like it was more than just a belief. Zara watched him with a sharper eye. You still have not said a word about the $500? That is a year's wages for most cowhands. Wade crouched down by the creek, splashing cool water onto his face before drinking from his hands. I have been putting money aside. There's not a whole lot to spend it on when you're moving cattle. It was not the whole story, and they both knew that, but Zara was just too worn out and wrung out to push him on it. She found a flat rock near the water's edge and let herself sink onto it, suddenly feeling the deep thirst in her throat. After leaning in to drink, she sat back, gazing at the stranger looking back at her from the creek's surface. Most of the pins had come loose from her hair during the long ride, leaving it in a tangled mess around her face. The sun and wind had burned her cheeks, and her eyes had a haunted quality she did not recognize. Was this freedom? To be bought by a man she did not know, sitting by a stream in the middle of nowhere. We can reach Elkwood before the sun goes down, Wade's voice cut through her thoughts. It is not much of a town, but they have a good inn. You can get a hot meal and a real bed to sleep in. And after that? Zara asked, her eyes lifting to meet his. You are just going to let me walk away after you spent all that money? Wade held her gaze, his own unwavering. That money paid for your freedom from your father. It did not buy you for me. We get to Elkwood. I will give you enough money to get yourself to San Francisco, if that is still where you want to be. Zara's eyes narrowed. Why would you do all of this? What is in it for you? A brief shadow seemed to cross Wade's face. The satisfaction of knowing I did not just stand by and watch something awful happen when I had the power to stop it. He turned away from her then, busying himself with checking the horse's saddle. We should get moving if we want to make it to town before it gets dark. Zara reluctantly pushed herself to her feet. Whatever this man's real reasons were, he was right about one thing. She had to get as far away from her father as she possibly could. She let Wade help her back onto the horse this time, and they continued their journey into the setting sun. As the sky bled into shades of gold and deep red, Zara found herself starting to relax against Wade's steady form behind her. The arm around her waist felt less like she was a prisoner and more like she was being protected. Even so, she stayed on her guard. In her 20 years of life, she had come to understand that men seldom offered a hand without expecting a payment of some kind. As twilight bled into true dark, the faint lights of Elkwood began to glow in the distance. It was a small place, just as he had said, with a single main road lined by a handful of buildings, the promised inn among them. Wade led the horse to the rail in front of the two-story clapboard structure. A stout woman with streaks of gray in her hair looked up from behind the front desk as they stepped inside, her gaze shifting from Wade to Zara with plain curiosity. We will be needing 2 rooms for the night, Wade stated, setting some coins on the worn wood of the counter. The woman's eyebrows hitched up a little. I only have 1 room left, mister. The hands from the Circle R are staying over. It is their payday. Wade's brow furrowed. Is there another inn around? Afraid not. This is all there is, unless you want to try your luck in the livery stable. Zara's whole body went rigid. The thought of sharing a room with this man was unthinkable. I will sleep in the stable, Wade said before she could even protest. The lady can take the room. The innkeeper just shrugged. Suit yourself. She slid a key over the counter. The room is up the stairs, last door on your right. The dining room is that way. She gestured with her head toward an archway that smelled of roasted meat and coffee. We will be serving for another hour or so. Wade gave her a nod of thanks and then looked at Zara. You go on and get some rest. We can figure out your trip to San Francisco in the morning. Zara held the key in her hand, feeling a sudden wave of confusion. Was this man truly going to sleep with the horses just so she could have a room to herself? Thank you, she said, the words feeling foreign and clumsy. It was not often she had a reason to thank a man for simple decency. Wade simply nodded. You ought to eat something first. You must be powerful hungry. She was starving. Her father had hauled her to the saloon before she had had a bite of lunch. Yes, she confessed quietly. They walked into the dining room, a noisy space about half filled with hard-faced men who stopped their conversations to watch them enter. Wade led Zara toward a small table in the far corner, choosing the chair that put his back against the wall, so he could face the entire room. It was the way a man sat when he was used to keeping an eye on things, Zara noticed. A woman brought them each a bowl of thick stew with a side of bread and mugs of black coffee. Zara ate with a hunger that made her almost forget her manners, while Wade ate at a much slower pace, his eyes never quite settled, always scanning the room. Are you going to tell me why you really stepped in today? Zara finally asked after the worst of her hunger had passed. Wade put his spoon down and seemed to think on her question for a long moment. My sister was just 16, he said at last, when a man twice her age took a shine to her. My father, he agreed to the marriage, never even asked her what she wanted. His face grew hard. She took off the night before the wedding was supposed to happen. They found her 3 days later. She must have lost her footing in the dark, fallen from a cliff while trying to get to the next town over. Zara felt the air catch in her throat. I am so sorry. That was 8 years ago, he continued. I was 18, just starting to find my own path. I was not there to help her back then. His blue eyes found hers across the table. But I was there to help you today. The plain truth in his voice was so strong that Zara had to look away. My mother passed on 3 years ago, she offered, breaking the silence. The consumption took her. She was the only person who ever stood up to my father. When she was gone, something in him changed. He got colder, meaner. And you were planning to run to your aunt. Zara nodded. She sends me a letter now and then without my father knowing. She has her own little dress shop out in San Francisco. She said I could come live with her, learn the trade. Zara ran a finger along the rim of her coffee mug. I want to have a life of my own, not be some piece of property my father can trade away. That is a fine thing to want, Wade said. He finished his coffee and pushed his chair back. I had best go check on my horse. You get some sleep, Miss Adams. We will sort out how to get you to San Francisco tomorrow. As he moved through the room, Zara could not help but watch him. She watched him, taking in the solid set of his shoulders, and how the other fellas in the room seemed to size him up, then write him off as no real trouble. There was a quiet air about Wade Lawrence that said he was a dangerous man if pushed, but was otherwise content to keep to himself. For the first time since being hauled onto that auction block, Zara felt a small spark of hope. Maybe this whole nightmare wouldn't end as badly as it began. Upstairs, the room was plain but tidy, holding a small bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the main street. Zara cleaned up the best she could with the water and soap left for her. She sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly crushed by the weight of the day. Her own father had sold her. A stranger had bought her. And now she was stuck in a town she had never even heard of. Soon she would be traveling to a city she had never laid eyes on, to live with an aunt she had not seen since she was a little girl. The tears finally came hot and quick as the feelings she had bottled up all day long finally burst loose. She wept for her mother who was gone, for the father who had loved her once before. Sorrow twisted him into a man she no longer recognized. And for herself, set adrift in a world where women were treated more like property than people. When the tears finally stopped, Zara fell back onto the bed, letting the deep weariness take her. Her very last thought before sleep was of Wade Lawrence's steady blue eyes and the surprising kindness in his voice when he had asked where she needed to go. Morning arrived with the sounds of wagons and horses clattering down in the street below. Zara woke up confused, forgetting for a moment just where she was. The memories of the day before came flooding back, and she shot up in bed. Bright sunlight poured through the little window, telling her it was later than her usual waking time. A knock on the door made her jump. "Miss Adams, are you up and about?" It was Wade's voice. Zara quickly smoothed her rumpled dress and tried to fix her hair before Wade was standing in the narrow hall, looking clean-shaven and far more rested than she felt. In his hands, he held a small, paper-wrapped parcel. "Mornin'," he said. "I went ahead and bought a few things for your trip." He passed the bundle to her. "It is not much, I'm afraid. The general store in a town this size does not carry a whole lot." Zara carefully unwrapped the paper. Inside was a simple wooden comb, a small cake of soap that smelled faintly of lavender, a toothbrush, and a soft, lightweight shawl. "Thank you," she said, truly touched by his forethought. "They are serving breakfast downstairs," he told her. "After we eat, we need to talk about your travel." Wade paused for a second. "I have been asking around. A stagecoach comes through here tomorrow, heading west. It can get you all the way to Carson City. From there, you would have to catch a train to Sacramento, and then another one to get to San Francisco." Zara listened and nodded slowly. It sounded like a solid plan, but the idea of making such a long journey all by herself was daunting. "Have you ever been on a stagecoach?" Wade asked her then. "No," she admitted. "I have hardly been farther than the town limits of Paradise since we moved there 10 years ago." A flicker of what looked like concern crossed Wade's face. "It is a rough trip even for a seasoned traveler, let alone someone who has never done it before." "I do not see that I have any other option," Zara replied simply. Wade stood there for a moment, looking as if he were turning something over in his mind. "Let me take you," he said at last. "At least as far as Sacramento. I have been that way before, and you would be a whole lot safer than if you go alone." Zara just stared at him. "You have done far too much for me already. You cannot be serious about spending days on a stagecoach just to make sure I get to California safely." "It has been a while since I have seen California," Wade said, with a dismissive shrug that did not quite hide the resolve in his eyes. "And as it happens, I do not have anywhere else I need to be." "But what about your job, the cattle drives? The season is about over," he said. "The cattle drive I brought to Paradise was the last thing on my list for a good while." Zara paused. One part of her wanted to say no, just to prove she could make it on her own. But the other, more sensible part knew that a woman traveling by herself was facing some serious risks. "I cannot ask you to do that," she said at last. "You are not asking. I am offering." The hard lines of Wade's face seemed to soften just a bit. "Think of it as part of the price of your freedom." His tone suggested there was more to his offer than just being a gentleman. But before Zara could ask him about it, he motioned toward the stairs. "Let's go get some breakfast. You can think on it while we eat." The dining room was not as packed as it had been the night before. They took the same table in the corner, and the server brought out plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits smothered in gravy. As they ate, Wade laid out the journey in more detail. 2 days on a stagecoach to Carson City, then a day on the train to Sacramento, and from there another half a day to get to San Francisco. "It is not an easy trip," he warned her. "Stagecoaches are tight, dusty, and they only stop long enough to grab a quick meal and swap out the horses." "I am tougher than I appear," Zara said, lifting her chin a little. A faint smile touched Wade's lips. "I do not doubt that, Miss Adams." "Please, call me Zara," she said without thinking. "After all, you are the one who purchased me." The words sounded more bitter than she had meant them to. Wade's expression grew serious. "I did not purchase you, Zara. I purchased your father's legal claim on you. There is a world of difference." She looked down at her plate. "I know, and I am grateful. It is just so humiliating being sold off like a head of cattle." "That shame belongs to your father, not to you," Wade said, his voice firm. Their eyes met across the table, and for a second something connected them. Maybe it was a shared understanding, or just one soul recognizing another who had faced down hardship. "I will accept your offer to escort me to California," Zara said finally. "But I have to insist on paying you back when I can. My aunt will help me find a job, and I will send you the money as soon as I am able." Wade looked like he was about to argue, but then he seemed to understand how important it was for her to keep her pride. "As you wish," he said, "though there is no great rush." With their plans made, Wade suggested they take a walk through the small town. "You will get enough sitting on the journey," he remarked, "and we ought to buy a few more things for your travels." Elkwood turned out to be a regular frontier town, dusty and built for purpose, but it had a certain charm. The general store was well stocked for a place its size, and Wade insisted on buying Zara a strong traveling bag, another set of clothes, a canteen, and a wide-brimmed hat for the sun. "This is far too much," she protested as the man behind the counter wrapped up their goods. "Think of it as an investment in a comfortable trip," Wade replied. "A sunburned and thirsty traveling partner would make for a truly awful journey." His dry sense of humor surprised a laugh out of her. Maybe the first real one in months. It felt strange and good, like finding a long-lost treasure. They used the rest of the day getting ready for the trip ahead. Wade found a place to board his horse in Elkwood until he came back. He bought their stagecoach tickets, and he sent a telegram to Sacramento about their train connection. Zara was amazed by how efficient and capable he was. It was clear this was not his first long trip. That evening, as they sat in the inn's dining room once more, Zara found herself looking at Wade more directly. In the glow of the lamplight, she could see light wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, the kind a man gets from years of squinting into the sun. A small scar cut through his right eyebrow, and his hands, while clean, showed the calluses and tiny scars of a man used to hard physical work. "How long have you been a cowboy?" she asked him. Wade thought on the question for a moment. "Started working cattle when I was 16. Before that, I helped out on my family's farm back in Missouri." "And your family? Are they still in Missouri?" A shadow passed over his face. "My parents passed on within a year of my sister. It was the farm fever. My younger brother is in St. Louis now, working for the railroad." "I am so sorry," Zara said softly. "It seems both of us have lost a great deal." Wade nodded, his face somber. "Loss shapes a person, all right. It makes them who they are." He looked straight at her. "What will you do in San Francisco besides working with your aunt?" The question took Zara by surprise. She had been so set on just getting away from paradise that she had not thought much past that. "I want to learn," she said after a second. "To read more, to understand things about the world, maybe even to write." She paused, then added, "My mother taught me to love books, but my father believed that too much reading gave women dangerous ideas." "And does it?" A hint of amusement was in Wade's voice. "I certainly hope so," Zara answered, with a small smile of her own. Their talk went on late into the evening. They talked about everything from their favorite books. Wade, to her surprise, was a fan of Shakespeare, to their hopes for what lay ahead. By the time they said goodnight, Zara was surprised to realize how at ease she felt with this man who had been a complete stranger only the day before. As she got ready for bed, she thought about this sharp turn her life had taken. Yesterday morning, she had been figuring out how to sneak away from her father's home, with no idea what was next. Now she was starting on a journey across half the country with a cowboy who had paid a small fortune just to make sure she was free. The stagecoach pulled in shortly after noon the next day, a dust-caked wagon drawn by 6 horses. It was already holding 4 other passengers, a middle-aged couple who said they were the Hendersons, a traveling salesman named Pritchard, and a young preacher named Reverend Collins. Wade helped Zara get in, then he climbed up behind her. The inside was cramped, with hardly enough space for the 6 of them and the small bags they carried. The bigger trunks were tied down on the roof. "First time on a stagecoach, miss?" Mrs. Henderson asked in a kind voice, seeing Zara's wide-eyed look. "Yes, ma'am," Zara confessed. "Well, get ready for a bumpy ride." the older woman said with a knowing smile. "And do not be afraid to lean on your husband when the road gets rough. That is what my man's shoulder is for after 30 years of marriage." Zara's face turned red. "Oh, Mr. Lawrence is not... We are not married." Wade stepped in smoothly. "Miss Adams is my cousin. I am seeing her safely to her aunt in San Francisco." The story seemed to satisfy Mrs. Henderson, though Reverend Collins did raise an eyebrow just a bit. Zara sent Wade a thankful glance for his quick wits. A single man and woman traveling on their own would surely get folks talking, but cousins were just fine. As the stagecoach groaned and moved forward, starting what was bound to be a long and hard trip, Zara caught herself thinking about the real Wade Lawrence. He had told her a little about his past, but she had a feeling there was a whole lot more to his story. What was the real reason he was in paradise that day? And why on earth was he going so far out of his way to help a woman he barely knew? That first day on the road was just as rough as Wade had warned. The coach bounced and rocked over the uneven ground, kicking up a cloud of dust that found its way inside through every little crack. They made a quick stop at a roadside station for a meal of beans and chewy beef, and then they kept going until the sun went down. The station where they stayed the night was not much more than a reinforced house that had a few rooms set aside for travelers. All the men bunked together in one big room, and the women had another. It was all very basic. But after a whole day of being rattled in the stagecoach, even that stiff cot was a welcome sight to Zara. The second day was much the same. By the time they finally rolled into Carson City, Zara was sore all over, covered in dust, and completely worn out. But she also felt a rush of excitement. She had never been so far from her home before, and she had never laid eyes on such different kinds of country. The Sierra Nevada mountains stood tall and grand in the distance, and the air itself felt new. It was crisper, and it smelled of pine trees instead of desert sage. Carson City was a real eye-opener after the small little places they had been through. It was a true city with solid-looking buildings, crowded streets, and a feeling that it was there to stay, which was something those frontier towns often seemed to be missing. Wade got them rooms in a hotel right by the train station, real rooms that had proper beds and their own private washrooms. "The train is set to leave at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning," he explained to Zara as they stood together in the hotel's lobby. "We should make it to Sacramento by the time night falls." Zara just nodded, suddenly realizing how much Wade stood out in this city environment. His clothes were worn from the trail, and his skin was tanned by the sun, marking him as a man who was more comfortable out on the open range than in a town. And yet, he walked with that same quiet self-assurance here, as he did out in the wild. "Would you care to join me for dinner after we have both had a chance to get cleaned up?" he asked. "I would like that very much," Zara answered. The truth was, she felt a little lost without his comforting presence nearby, a feeling that bothered her since she had only known him for such a short time. An hour later, Zara walked down the stairs to the hotel dining room, feeling like a completely new woman. She had taken a real bath for the first time in days, washing away all the dust from her journey. Her hair, clean and freshly brushed, fell in soft waves down her back. The brand-new dress that Wade had bought for her back in Elkwood, a simple one made of blue calico, was a huge improvement over her rumpled travel outfit. Wade was already waiting in the lobby, looking just as refreshed. He had shaved and put on a clean shirt, although his clothes still pegged him as a working man and not some city fellow. "You look," he started to say, but then he seemed to stop himself. "Refreshed," he said instead, but the look in his eyes hinted that he might have wanted to use a different word. The hotel's dining room was quite fancy for the frontier, with clean white tablecloths and real glass dinnerware. Zara felt a sudden twinge of sadness, thinking of similar dinners she had with her parents before her mother got sick, back when her father was still a man who knew how to be kind and how to laugh. "What is on your mind?" Wade asked, seeing the change in her face. Zara gave her head a little shake. "Just thinking about old times. Being in a nice place like this, it just makes me remember how things were before my mother passed away." Wade nodded, showing he understood. Time has a way of changing everything, he said in a low voice. And it changes people most of all. They placed their orders, which felt like a true luxury after so many days of roadside station food. And while they ate, Zara found herself wondering once more what would happen when they finally got to San Francisco. "Will you go back to Nevada after we get to the city?" she asked. Wade took a drink of his coffee before he gave her an answer. "Eventually. I have some business to take care of in Sacramento first." "What kind of business?" The question popped out before Zara had a chance to think if she was being too nosy. He paused for just a second. "It has to do with some property. I have been thinking about finally settling down. Maybe getting away from the long cattle drives." "Oh." Zara was taken aback by how much that news stirred something inside her. Of course, Wade had his own life and his own dreams. She had no right to his time beyond this one trip. But still, the thought of them going their separate ways in Sacramento left her with a strange, empty feeling. "It is possible," Wade said, choosing his words with care, "that once you are all settled in with your aunt, I might come and visit you in San Francisco, that is, if you would be all right with that." Zara looked up at him in a hurry, and for a moment she saw a rare look of vulnerability on his face before he hid it away. "I would like that very much," she said, and she truly meant it. In that moment, something changed between them. It was a small shift in the air, a new kind of awareness. For the very first time, Zara let herself admit that her feelings for Wade Lawrence were about more than just being thankful for his help. The rest of their dinner was very pleasant. Their conversation drifted from the history of Carson City to what they both expected to find in Sacramento and San Francisco. When they finally said goodnight to each other, Zara felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness about the part of the journey that was still to come. And she was not just thinking about the trip on the train, but about the journey of the heart she felt was just beginning. The train ride to Sacramento was another brand new adventure for Zara. Unlike that cramped and dusty old stagecoach, the passenger car was quite comfortable. It had soft, padded seats and big windows that gave them an amazing view of the scenery as it passed by. As the train started to climb up into the mountains, Zara pushed her face right up against the glass, amazed by the huge pine trees and the stunning views. "It just takes your breath away," she said as she turned to Wade, who was sitting right next to her. "I never dreamed that the world could be this beautiful." Wade's expression grew softer as he watched how excited she was. There is a lot of beauty in this world if you just know where to find it. The trip carried them through mountain passes that ran alongside fast-moving rivers, and then finally down into the Sacramento Valley, a green and fertile land that was a world away from the desert they had left behind. By the time it was late in the afternoon, the conductor called out that they were getting close to Sacramento. As the train started to slow down, entering the edge of the city, Zara felt a little wave of nervousness. Very soon they would come to the end of this stretch of their trip. Wade would go see to his business, and she would have to travel on to San Francisco all by herself. The train station in Sacramento was a whirlwind of noise and motion. Porters hurried by with stacks of luggage, passengers got off and on the trains, and sellers hawked their newspapers and snacks. After the peace and quiet of their journey, all the noise and chaos was a bit much to take in. Wade kept a steadying hand on Zara's elbow as he led her through the swarm of people and into the station's main building. "The next train to San Francisco leaves tomorrow morning," he told her, looking at a schedule that was posted on the wall. "We had better find a place to stay for the night." "Will you be able to get all your business done that quickly?" Zara asked. Wade paused for a moment. "It might take me a couple of days, but there is no need for you to wait. You should go on to your aunt's place like you planned." Zara bit down on her lip, not wanting to say out loud how scary the idea of finishing the trip on her own now felt. "Of course," she said, trying to make her voice sound casual. "That makes perfect sense." Wade looked like he was about to say something else, but just then, a voice called out his name. They both turned around and saw a man in a nice suit walking toward them. He was maybe in his 40s, with a well-trimmed beard and a sharp look in his eyes. "Lawrence, I had a feeling that was you." The man held out his hand and Wade shook it with a firm grip. "Judge Harmon," Wade said, and you could hear the surprise in his voice. "I did not expect to see you here." "I'm in town for the circuit court session," the judge said, and then his eyes moved over to Zara with curiosity. "You will have to forgive my poor manners," Wade said. "Judge Harmon, I would like you to meet Miss Zara Adams. Zara, this is Judge Thomas Harmon from the Nevada Territorial Court." Zara gave a polite nod, wondering how in the world Wade knew a territorial judge. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Miss Adams," Judge Harmon said with a gentlemanly nod. "Lawrence, I am certainly glad I happened to see you. Something's come up about that business we discussed. Maybe we ought to talk where folks can't hear." Wade shot a look at Zara, clearly torn about what to do. "Please, don't let me hold you up," she said right away. "I can just wait right here." He hesitated for just a second, then gave a nod. "I won't be but a minute," he promised, before he and the judge stepped away. They walked far enough off that Zara couldn't hear their words, but she could see by their faces it was serious. The judge did most of the talking, and Wade just nodded along. What kind of business would a simple cowboy have with a territorial judge? The question just deepened the feeling that there was a whole lot more to Wade Lawrence than he was letting on. He was a man of his word and came back after a short talk. "Sorry about that," he said. "The judge has been giving me a hand with a legal matter." "It looked pretty serious," Zara noted, watching his face. "It is, in its own way." Wade plainly had no intention of saying more. "Let's get you to that hotel. You must be worn out from the trip." They found rooms in a hotel down by the station. After they both had a chance to clean up, they met for dinner in the hotel restaurant. While they were eating, Zara found herself just watching Wade, trying to piece together the puzzle he presented. "You look like you've got a question or two on your mind," he finally said, putting his fork down. Zara managed a small smile. "More like a few dozen, if I'm being honest." "Go on and ask 'em," Wade told her plainly. She picked her words with care. "You are not just a cowboy, are you? There is something else to your story." Wade stayed quiet for a long while, his blue eyes lost in thought. Then he let out a sigh. "You are right. I have not been completely honest about myself." "Who are you really, Wade Lawrence?" Zara asked, her voice soft. Wade looked around the dining room for a moment, then leaned in a little closer. "I was a deputy United States Marshal for 3 years before I decided to go back to ranch work." Zara's eyes went wide. Zara's eyes. A marshal. That explained the air of authority he carried, the way he was always watching, and his connection with the judge. Wade gave a slight nod. "I still take on a job now and then for the marshal's office. Unofficial work for when they need someone who can move around certain folks without making a fuss." "Is that why you were in Paradise, on a job?" "Yes and no." Wade paused for a second. "I was tracking a man, a cattle rustler with a price on his head. My information pointed me toward Paradise, but finding you on that auction stage was never part of any assignment." Zara took in this new information bit by bit. "So when you told me you delivered a herd of cattle, that part was true. I have been working cattle drives in between assignments. It is a good cover, and I happen to enjoy the work." "And your business in Sacramento?" "That was partly connected to the rustler I was after," Wade confessed, "but it was also personal. I have been saving my money to buy a small ranch not far from here. The judge has been helping me work through some of the legal parts of the sale." Zara leaned back in her chair, trying to make this new picture of Wade fit with the man she thought she knew. In a way, it all made sense. It explained his skill, his confidence when things got dangerous, and that solid sense of right and wrong he had. "Why did you decide to tell me now?" she asked. Wade looked her straight in the eye. "Because I've found I do not want to lie to you anymore. Not even by leaving things out." The pure honesty in his voice caught Zara completely by surprise. Before she could figure out what to say, Wade went on, "There is something else you ought to know. I have decided to see you all the way to San Francisco, not just to Sacramento, if you will allow me." Zara could not hide the wave of relief that washed over her at his offer. "I would welcome that very much," she said. "But what about your business here? It can wait another few days." Wade's face softened. Getting you safely to your aunt just seems a lot more important right now. Later that night, as Zara got ready for sleep in her own hotel room, she thought about everything he had told her. Wade Lawrence. He was a cowboy, a former marshal, and her protector when she least expected it. He was becoming more and more important to her in ways she had never seen coming. The idea of finally getting to San Francisco, of having to say goodbye to him, was not just a little scary anymore. It was painful. She scolded herself for thinking such things. They had known each other for less than a week. Her entire life had been turned upside down, and she had no idea what her future held. This was absolutely no time to be forming romantic feelings. And yet, as she started to drift off to sleep, it was the image of Wade's steady blue eyes and his quiet strength that filled her mind. The train for San Francisco left Sacramento at 9 o'clock the next morning. It wound its way southwest, passing through green farmlands and towns that were getting bigger. Zara and Wade got seats next to each other by a window. The other passengers were a mix of businessmen, families, and a handful of women in fashionable dresses that Zara looked at with a mix of wonder and worry. Would the society in San Francisco expect her to be so polished? Her plain dresses would surely mark her as a simple country girl among such elegant people. "You are frowning," Wade pointed out. "Second thoughts about San Francisco?" Zara shook her head. "Not exactly. It is just sinking in how unprepared I am for life in a city." Wade's eyes followed hers to the finely dressed women. "Your aunt is a dressmaker, is she not? I would imagine she will help you figure out things like that." "I suppose so," Zara sighed. "It is all just starting to feel real. How much everything is changing, and how much I do not know about the world I'm about to step into." "Change can be a scary thing," Wade admitted, "but it can also be exciting. You are free to become whoever you want to be now." Zara thought about that. "And who do you suppose that might be, I wonder?" "Someone remarkable, I have no doubt," Wade said with so much honesty that Zara could feel her cheeks getting warm. The train ride went by quickly, and the scenery slowly changed as they got closer to the coast. By early in the afternoon, they saw their first glimpse of the San Francisco Bay, a huge stretch of blue water filled with ships of every kind. "It is magnificent," Zara said with a breath, leaning past Wade to get a better look out the window. "Wait until you see the city itself," Wade said. "There is nothing in the world quite like San Francisco." As the train finally pulled into the station, Zara felt a jumble of excitement and nerves. She had managed to send a telegram from Sacramento to let her aunt know when they would be arriving, but there had been no way to get a message back. Would her Aunt Cordelia even be there to meet them? Would she be as welcoming in person as she had been in her letters? The station in San Francisco was even more chaotic than the one in Sacramento had been. It was a storm of noises, smells, and people moving everywhere. Wade stayed right by Zara's side as they pushed through the crowd, got their bags, and headed for the main entrance of the station. "Zara! Zara Adams!" a woman's voice called out over all the noise. When Zara turned, she saw a slim woman who looked to be about 50 years old. She was dressed in a stylish burgundy traveling suit, with her graying blonde hair tucked neatly under a simple hat. Even though many years had passed since they had last seen each other, Zara knew right away it was her mother's sister. "Aunt Cordelia!" she cried out, rushing forward. The two women hugged tightly, and afterward Cordelia held Zara by the shoulders to get a good look at her. "Look at you," she said with a warm smile. "You are the very image of your mother at your age." Her eyes, which were the same shade of green as Zara's, shined with both happiness and the start of tears. "I was not sure you would get my telegram in time," Zara said. "Luckily, I happened to be at the shop when it was delivered." Cordelia then noticed Wade, who was standing back at a polite distance. "And this must be Mr. Lawrence, the man who escorted you." Zara introduced them, suddenly feeling a little awkward. How much was she supposed to tell her aunt about how they had met? About the part Wade played in her escape from paradise? Wade solved the problem by speaking directly to Cordelia. "It is a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. Miss Adams, Cordelia corrected him with a smile. I never married. And the pleasure is all mine, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you for making sure my niece arrived safely in San Francisco. A carriage was waiting for them just outside the station. As they rode through the streets of San Francisco, Zara's mind was split between the incredible sights of the city, with its hills, the bay, and the massive buildings, and the conversation going on between her aunt and Wade. Cordelia, as it turned out, was a very direct woman. So, Mr. Lawrence, Zara's telegram only said that you were bringing her here from Nevada. If you do not mind my asking, how did you two come to be traveling with each other? Wade looked over at Zara, making it clear that it was her story to tell. It is a rather complicated story, Aunt. Zara started, not sure where to begin. After Mother passed away, Father... He changed. He became very controlling and angry. He tried to arrange marriages for me that I refused. Cordelia's face grew dark. I was afraid of that when he stopped writing and your own letters started to sound more guarded. 3 days ago, Zara had to swallow hard. He put me up for auction in the saloon to teach me obedience, was how he put it. Cordelia gasped, and her hand shot up to her mouth. Good heavens, Zachariah actually tried to sell you. He did sell me, Zara said in a quiet voice, to Mr. Lawrence, who right away asked me where I wanted to go. When I said San Francisco, he brought me here. Cordelia turned to face Wade, her expression a mix of complete shock and deep gratitude. You purchased my niece's freedom. Wade looked uncomfortable with how intensely she was looking at him. It just seemed like the right thing to do. The right thing? Cordelia repeated the word softly. Mr. Lawrence, I do not know very many men who would say that buying a woman's freedom and then escorting her safely halfway across the country is simply the right thing. Wade shifted a little in his seat. Miss Adams has already promised to. She can pay me back when she is able, though I have told her not to worry about it. Pay you back? Cordelia glanced from Wade to Zara. That is complete nonsense. I will handle whatever amount my brother-in-law squeezed out of you right now. That is not necessary, Wade stated with finality. I insist on it. Cordelia's voice left no room to argue. I may not have Zachariah's kind of money, but my shop does just fine for me. Now, tell me, how much did that shameful business set you back? Wade hesitated for a moment before he told her the figure. Cordelia's eyebrows lifted just a little, but she gave a firm nod. I will have a bank draft prepared in the morning. The carriage made a turn onto a quiet street lined with trees and tidy houses, eventually pulling up to a lovely 2-story home that had a little garden out front. The ground floor was now a storefront, with a tasteful sign in the window that read, Cordelia's Creations. We are here, Cordelia announced as the driver gave them a hand down. This is my home and my business. I live on the 2nd floor, and there is more than enough room for you, Zara. Mr. Lawrence, I absolutely insist that you join us for dinner. Considering what you have done for my niece, it is the very least I can offer. The inside of the shop was a whole new world for Zara. She saw beautiful gowns arranged on dress forms. There were bolts of fabric in every color and feel you could imagine, and a workroom was visible through a doorway, where a few young women were hard at work sewing. It is just wonderful, Aunt, Zara said with genuine feeling. It is exactly like you wrote in your letters, but even more lovely. Cordelia beamed with pride. It has been many years of hard work, but I have to say I am quite proud of what I have managed to build. She guided them up a staircase toward the rear of the shop, which led to a cozy apartment upstairs. Let me get you settled in your room, Zara. You will want to clean up a bit after your long trip. Mr. Lawrence, please go on and make yourself at home in the parlor. Zara's room was on the smaller side, but had a sweet charm, with a window that looked out over the garden behind the house. Cordelia helped her unpack the few things she owned, clucking her tongue over the sparse selection of clothes. Well, we can fix that soon enough, she declared. You will have some new dresses before the week is out. Now I want you to tell me everything. I mean the whole story, not the short version you shared in the carriage. Zara sat down on the edge of the bed as a wave of emotion washed over her. Oh, Aunt, things have been just awful since Mother passed away. Father changed into a man I did not even know. I first thought it was just his sorrow, but the feeling never left him. He grew fixated on his business and on his reputation in town. He started to see me as just a piece on a board, something to be traded for his own gain. She recounted the stories of the 3 men her father had picked for her. They were all older, wealthy men who were more concerned with getting a young wife as a trophy than with Zara herself. She explained her plan to run away, how she was caught, and then dragged to that saloon, and the shame of being put on that makeshift stage for all to see. Then Mr. Lawrence, Wade showed up, Zara went on. He bid more than anyone else, and after it was all over, he just asked me where I wanted to go. It was truly unbelievable. Cordelia listened, watching her niece with a thoughtful expression. And throughout your journey, he treated you properly. With absolute respect, Zara promised her. He has been a true gentleman through and through. He even spent a night in a livery stable when our inn only had a single room left. That is quite something, Cordelia said softly. And what does he plan to do now that he has brought you to San Francisco? Zara paused for a moment. I am not completely sure. He talked about some business up in Sacramento. He is thinking about buying a ranch up that way. I believe he is heading back tomorrow. Cordelia's sharp gaze did not miss the flicker of sadness that crossed Zara's face as she said this. I understand, she said plainly. Well, we had better get dinner started. I imagine you both are starving after your travels. Dinner was a lovely time spent in Cordelia's little dining room. She was a fantastic cook and an even better person to talk to, skillfully drawing Wade's own story out of him with her questions. He talked more freely than he had with Zara, telling them about his time as a deputy marshal, why he decided to go back to ranching, and his hopes of starting his own place near Sacramento. The land I have my eye on has a good water source and plenty of grass for grazing, he told them. It is not anything grand, but it is enough to build a life on. And will you be running this ranch all by yourself? Cordelia asked, her tone light, though Zara sensed a deeper meaning in the question. Wade looked over at Zara for a second before he spoke. I will be for now, but I hope that is not always the case. The evening went by in a warm and pleasant blur, ending far too soon for Zara. When the clock on the mantel chimed 10, Wade stood up to go. I ought to find a place to stay for the night, he said. My train to Sacramento leaves first thing in the morning. That is just hogwash, Cordelia announced. I have a guest room that is perfectly good. I will not allow you to stay anywhere else. Wade seemed taken aback by her offer. That is mighty kind of you, but I surely would not want to be a bother. After what you did for my niece, Mr. Lawrence, you could never be a bother in this house, Cordelia said with a firm tone. Besides, it will give us another chance to talk over breakfast. After a little more gentle convincing, Wade finally agreed. Cordelia led him to the guest room, which left Zara by herself with her own thoughts for a moment. The hard truth that Wade would be gone tomorrow began to settle on her like a heavy blanket. In just under a week, this man had become the anchor for her feelings of safety and her hopes for the future. The very idea of moving forward without him felt deeply wrong, like a critical piece of her new life would be gone before it even started. A little later, as Zara was getting ready for bed, there was a gentle knock on her door. She opened it and saw Cordelia standing there. May I come in for a minute? Her aunt asked. Zara nodded and Cordelia stepped inside, pulling the door closed behind her. She looked at Zara for a second before she spoke. You have feelings for him, do you not? She asked, getting straight to the point. Zara could feel her face grow warm. Aye, it is a complicated situation. Cordelia offered a soft smile. Matters of the heart almost always are, but I watched the two of you this evening, and I do not think I am wrong to believe that his feelings for you are just as strong. It is just too quick, Zara said in protest. We have not even known each other a full week, and so much has happened. Time is a poor way to measure a true connection, Cordelia told her. Your own mother knew she was going to marry your father right after she met him. She told me so in a letter. Her face softened as she recalled the memory. She wrote, I have met the man I am going to spend the rest of my life with, Cord. Do not ask me to explain how I know. I just know. Zara was stunned to hear this. She never told me that story. She probably would have when you were a bit older. Cordelia gently patted Zara's hand. I am not telling you to rush into anything, only that you should be honest with yourself about your own feelings. When Cordelia had gone, Zara went to her window and looked down at the moonlit garden below. What were her feelings for Wade Lawrence? She was grateful, of course. She respected his decency and his bravery. She admired his quiet strength and his gentle nature. But was it something more than that? The pain she felt just thinking about him leaving told her that it was. The morning arrived far too soon. Zara got dressed carefully, choosing her best dress, the blue calico, before she went to join her aunt and Wade for breakfast. The talk around the table was friendly, but everyone was aware that a goodbye was just around the corner. Before long, it was time for Wade to head to the station. Cordelia found a clever reason to go take care of something in the shop, which left Zara and Wade by themselves in the parlor. Your aunt is quite a woman, Wade said. I can understand why you were so set on getting here. Zara just nodded. She has the same spirit as my mother, that same strength and independence. Wade paused for a beat, then he reached into his coat pocket and took out an envelope. I want you to take this, he said, holding it toward her. Zara accepted it and looked at him with a question in her eyes. That is the money your father was asking for, Wade clarified. I am not going to take any payment back from you or from your aunt. Use it to start your new life here. Wade, I cannot possibly. Please, he cut in softly. It would mean a whole lot to me if I knew it was being used for something good. Zara felt the sting of tears in her eyes. I do not know how I can ever thank you for everything. Wade moved a step closer, his blue eyes fixed on hers. There is no reason to thank me. These last few days I have spent with you have been... He stopped, trying to find the right words. More important to me than I know how to say. The air between them was thick with things left unsaid. Zara found herself wishing that he would just kiss her. And then she blushed at how forward her own thoughts were. I had better get going, Wade finally said. But I would like to write to you, if that would be all right. That would be very welcome, Zara replied without a moment's hesitation. There was another silence, and then Wade did something she did not expect. He gently took her hand and lifted it to his lips, placing a soft kiss on her knuckles. The move felt both wonderfully old-fashioned and incredibly personal. Until I see you again, Zara Adams, he murmured. And just like that, he was gone. He left Zara standing there in her aunt's parlor, her heart racing and her hand still warm from his touch. The days that came after were a whirlwind of new things for Zara. Cordelia began teaching her the dressmaking trade, giving her simple jobs at first, but she quickly saw that her niece had a real talent for design. She also introduced Zara to her group of friends, all of them strong-willed women who had started their own businesses, seen the world, or simply refused to live by other people's rules. San Francisco gives a woman more room to breathe than most places, Cordelia told her, though we certainly still have our share of hurdles to cross. Zara dove headfirst into learning not only about making dresses, but also about the world at large. Cordelia's house had a small library inside, which Zara took to exploring every evening with great interest. There were nights she would read out loud to her aunt while the older woman worked on her sewing, and their talks would wander from books to politics and even to fashion. But even with her full days and the thrill of her new life, Zara's thoughts kept drifting back to Wade. He was a man of his word, and he wrote to her regularly, once every week. His letters always showed up on Friday, arriving with an amazing reliability. He told her about how the ranch purchase was coming along, about the little house on the property that he was fixing up, and about all his hopes for the place. His way of writing was just like his way of talking. It was direct, but full of thought. And every now and then he would show a dry sense of humor that always made Zara smile. She wrote back to him just as often, telling him all about her own adventures in San Francisco, how her skills were growing at the dress shop, and about the books she was reading. She realized she was being more open and honest somehow seemed more honest in her letters than she ever was in person, almost as if the distance gave her the freedom to share her real thoughts and feelings. The weeks rolled by, and the warmth of summer slowly faded into the crisp air of autumn. Zara had been living in San Francisco for almost 2 months when a letter from Wade arrived that felt different from all the others. "I will be coming back to San Francisco next week," he had written. "There are things I need to talk to you about. These are matters far too important to put in a letter. If you and your aunt are agreeable, I would like to visit with you." Zara's heart pounded in her chest as she read his words. What could possibly be so important? And why did the thought of seeing Wade again stir up both happiness and a deep sense of worry inside her? Cordelia, who was reading the letter over Zara's shoulder, offered a knowing smile. "Well now, my dear, it appears Mr. Lawrence has come to some sort of decision." "What are you talking about?" Zara asked, even though a part of her already had a feeling she knew the answer. "Men do not travel hundreds of miles to discuss business unless that business involves matters of the heart," Cordelia explained with a gentle, amused tone. "I do believe your cowboy is getting ready to make his intentions clear." A blush spread across Zara's cheeks. "You cannot possibly know that for sure." "Perhaps not with absolute certainty," Cordelia admitted, "but I have seen enough of this life to know the signs when I see them. The real question is, how would you feel about such a thing, if it were to happen?" It was a question Zara had been asking herself more and more often lately. In the weeks since they had said goodbye, her feelings for Wade had done nothing but grow stronger. His letters showed a man with deep character, a sharp mind, and a kindness that proved her first impressions were right. She found herself measuring other men against him, and they all came up short. "I care about him," she finally confessed, "more than I ever imagined I could in such a brief time." Cordelia nodded, looking pleased with the answer. "In that case, we will welcome Mr. Lawrence with open arms when he gets here." Wade's arrival the following Tuesday stirred up a small storm of excitement in Cordelia's dress shop. The young women sewing in the back giggled behind their hands when the tall cowboy stepped inside, holding his hat and looking a little out of place amidst the fancy gowns and fabrics. But his eyes found Zara right away, and the pure warmth in his look sent a shiver of delight through her. "Welcome back to San Francisco, Mr. Lawrence," Cordelia said, greeting him warmly. "Zara, why do you not show Mr. Lawrence out to the garden? It is a perfect afternoon to enjoy some tea outside." The little garden behind the shop had become one of Zara's favorite spots to escape. It was a quiet place with a couple of fruit trees, beautiful flowering plants, and a stone bench next to a small trickling fountain. As they sat down with the tea tray Cordelia had sent out, Zara suddenly felt bashful, not knowing what to say to the very man whose letters had come to mean so much to her. Wade seemed just as unsure, turning his hat over and over in his hands before he finally placed it on the bench beside him. "You are looking well," he said. "Looking well? San Francisco obviously suits you." "It does," Zara agreed. "Aunt Cordelia has been just wonderful, and I'm learning so much working in the shop." "I have truly enjoyed your letters," Wade said. "They have given me a window into your new life out here." "And I have enjoyed yours as well," Zara answered. "How are things coming along with the ranch?" A look of pride lit up Wade's face. "That is one of the things I came to tell you about. The sale is final. The place is officially mine now. 160 acres with a good source of water and plenty of grass for grazing. The house needs some fixing up, but its bones are solid. I have been making repairs one small step at a time." "That is just wonderful," Zara said with genuine feeling. "You must be very proud of it." "I am." Wade paused for a moment, then reached inside his coat pocket. "I brought you something to see." He pulled out a small photograph on a metal plate and handed it to her. The picture showed a simple farmhouse with a big front porch set against a background of rolling hills. A large oak tree stood proud in the yard, and you could see a small creek running nearby. "It is beautiful," Zara said, looking closely at the image. "It is not a grand place," Wade admitted, "but it is a good beginning. There is plenty of room to grow." Something in the way he said it made Zara look up from the picture. His blue eyes were fixed on her, as if he were searching for an answer. "Zara," he started, but then he seemed to lose his words. He took a deep breath and began again. Over these past months, your letters have meant so much. I found myself looking forward to Fridays more than I have ever looked forward to anything in my life. Zara's heart started beating a little faster. I felt the very same way about your letters, she said. Encouraged, Wade went on. The ranch is a fine piece of land, but a house does not become a home until the right people are living inside it. He reached over the small table and gently took her hand. I came all the way to San Francisco to ask if you would ever consider making a life with me in Sacramento. Even though she had been half expecting it, hearing the actual proposal left Zara breathless. Are you asking me to marry you, Wade? I am, he said plainly. I know it has not been a long time and you are just starting to build a new life for yourself here. I would never ask you to give that up if it is what you truly desire, but I have a strong feeling we could build something special together if you are willing to try. Zara glanced down at their joined hands, her thoughts racing. Was this happening too fast? Was she just exchanging one man's control for another's? But as soon as the questions came, she knew the answers. Wade had never once tried to control her, not from the moment he first asked her where she wanted to go. He had always respected her decisions and her freedom. Before I give you my answer, she said with care, there is something I must know. That day back in paradise, when you paid for my freedom. Was this what you were planning all along? Wade shook his head firmly. No. I did what I did because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected anything from you. My feelings for you grew while we traveled together and through the letters we shared. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. I do not want to own you, Zara. I want to be your partner. There is a world of difference. It was the perfect answer. Zara felt a smile spread across her face, a warm and sure feeling settling in her heart. Then yes, Wade Lawrence, I will marry you, and I will help you turn that house into a real home. The pure joy that lit up Wade's face was all the proof she needed to erase any small doubt she might have had. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it, just as he had on the day he left San Francisco. This time, however, the gesture felt like a promise for the future, not a goodbye. There is something else I need to tell you, Wade said after a moment. It is about paradise. Zara felt a knot of worry tighten in her stomach. What about it? After I left you here, I went straight back to Nevada. I filed official charges against your father for fraud, for holding you against your will, and for several other things. Judge Harmon was especially interested in hearing the case. Zara could only stare at him. You had my father arrested. He was arrested, yes. The trial took place 2 weeks ago. He has been sentenced to serve 5 years in the territorial prison. Wade watched her reaction closely. I know I should have talked to you first. I know that. But I could not stand by and let him get away with what he did. Not just for what he did to you, but to make sure he could never do that to another woman ever again. Zara sat in silence, trying to take in the news. Her father was in prison. The man who had raised her, who had once shown love to her and her mother, was now going to pay for his crimes. She felt a tangle of different emotions all at once. Relief, a touch of sadness, a little bit of guilt, but mostly, she felt a strong sense that justice had finally been done. Thank you for telling me, she finally said, and for doing what you did. It was the right thing, even if it is hard to hear. Wade nodded, his eyes full of understanding. There is one last thing. The court ordered him to pay you back. All of your father's property has been sold, and the money from the sale is being held for you in a trust. It is quite a large amount of money. This news was even more shocking. I am going to inherit my father's money after everything that happened? Judge Harmon made it very clear that it was your rightful inheritance from your mother, if nothing else. You do not have to make any decisions about it right away, but the money will be there for you when you are ready. Zara shook her head slowly, completely amazed by how much her world had turned around in just a few months. She had gone from being treated like property to be bought and sold to being a woman with her own money, new skills, a loving aunt, and a man who wanted to build a life with her as his equal. "I never imagined any of this could happen," she said quietly. Wade smiled. "Neither did I. But I am thankful for every single step of the journey that brought us to this moment." Later that evening, after Wade had gone back to his hotel with the promise to visit her again the next day, Zara sat with Cordelia in the parlor. She shared all the news about the proposal and everything else Wade had told her. "So," Cordelia said after Zara had finished her story, "a ranch in Sacramento, a large inheritance, and a man who values your independence. That is not a bad turn of events for a young woman who showed up at my shop with nothing but the dress on her back just 2 months ago." Zara had to laugh. "When you say it like that, it does sound pretty incredible. Life can be that way, my dear." Cordelia's face grew more serious and thoughtful. "I will miss you more than words can say, of course, but Sacramento is not so very far away. And I must admit, I am already looking forward to having grandnieces or grandnephews to spoil rotten." Zara blushed at the thought. "We have not even talked about having children yet." "There will be plenty of time for all of those conversations," Cordelia said with confidence. "The most important thing is that you have found a good man who sees you for who you truly are, and he cherishes what he sees." The next few weeks were a happy blur of activity. Zara and Wade chose to have a December wedding in San Francisco, which Cordelia would host. Wade went back to Sacramento to keep working on the ranch house, promising he would have it all ready for them to move into by Christmas. Zara spent her days helping out in the dress shop and getting ready for her new life. She even designed her very own wedding dress, a simple yet beautiful gown made of ivory, a silk gown with pearl buttons and the most delicate lace. Cordelia would not hear of anyone else making it, staying up through the night to make sure every single stitch was perfect. She simply said, "Think of it as my wedding present," when Zara worried about the cost and all the work. The letters kept right on flowing between San Francisco and Sacramento. But now they were full of real plans and shared dreams for the future. Wade mentioned building a second bedroom onto the house, a thought that made Zara's cheeks turn pink even as she couldn't help but smile. She wrote back with lists of things they'd need for their new life, the books she wanted to bring, and her ideas for a little garden all her own. December rolled in, feeling more like spring than winter, as if the world itself was giving them its blessing. The wedding was small but filled with joy, held right there in Cordelia's parlor, with just a few close friends. Zara looked beautiful in her gown, holding a bouquet of winter roses. Wade, looking sharp and just a bit overwhelmed in his new suit, couldn't look away as she walked into the room on Cordelia's arm. The minister, an old friend of Cordelia's, made the ceremony short and sweet, but full of meaning. When he declared them husband and wife, Wade's kiss was tender, yet it held the promise of a deeper love to come. Cordelia dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, and even the women from the dress shop were sniffling. The wedding breakfast that came after was a happy affair, with champagne toasts and a truly beautiful cake. As they got ready to head for the train, they learned Wade had arranged for them to stay the night in a Sacramento hotel before heading out to the ranch. Cordelia pulled Zara in for one last hug. "You be happy now, my dear girl," she whispered. "And you remember this house is always open to the both of you." Zara held on tight to her aunt, her heart just overflowing with thanks for this woman who had given her a home and so much love. "Thank you for absolutely everything," she said. "We will come visit often. I give you my word." The trip to Sacramento was a wonderful days. Zara was so aware of Wade sitting right beside her, of the new gold ring on her finger, and of the fact that she was now Mrs. Lawrence. The whole idea felt both exciting and a little unreal. Their first night as a married couple at the best hotel in Sacramento was a true discovery. Wade was just as kind and thoughtful in their most private time together as he had always been. Zara, who had been a bundle of nerves, was surprised to find a deep passion inside herself. Later, lying quietly in her husband's arms, she felt a powerful sense that everything was finally right. that she had found her real home in the world. The next day, they made the last part of the journey to their new life. As the wagon Wade had rented came over the top of a small hill, the ranch appeared below them. It was the same house from the photograph, but now a welcoming trail of smoke rose from the chimney, and she could see brand new curtains in the windows. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lawrence," Wade said softly, his arm pulling her in a little closer. Home. It was such a small word, but it held so much meaning. As Wade helped her down and then lifted her right up to carry her over the threshold, Zara felt the last few pieces of her life click perfectly into place. This was her home now. She was not a piece of property to be sold off, but a woman cherished for who she was, about to start a life with the man who had asked her that one important question on a dusty street in a town called Paradise. And it was there, together, that they had truly found their answer. 5 years flew by, and each one brought its own share of happiness and hard work to the Lawrence Ranch. The house got bigger right along with their family. First came their son, William, born in the winter of 1877, and then their daughter, Eleanor, 2 years after that. Wade's smart handling of the ranch and Zara's wise use of her inheritance money had turned their small piece of land into one of the most successful spreads in the area. Zara had also used some of that money to start her own small business, a dress shop in Sacramento. It was a lot like Cordelia's, but the designs were all her own. The shop did wonderfully, even while she was busy being a mother and a rancher's wife. Wade had been behind her 100%, and he would often look after the children when she had to be in town for work. Cordelia came to visit all the time, just loving her role as the honorary grandmother to the Lawrence children. She had even made her San Francisco shop bigger, and now had a dozen women working for her, a few of whom Zara had sent her way from Sacramento. On this one warm evening in the summer of 1880, Zara was standing on the porch of their house. She was watching Wade teach 5-year-old William how to ride his new pony, while little 3-year-old Eleanor sat on the fence, giggling at the sight. The setting sun just drenched everything in a warm, golden light. It made Wade's dark hair shine like bronze and caught the proud line of his shoulders as he steadied their boy. Watching her family, Zara thought about the long road that had led her to this very spot. To go from being a scared young woman on an auction block to a respected business owner, a loved wife, and a mother felt like a miracle. But she knew it all started with one simple question from a man who knew that being free was not enough if you did not have a choice. Where to? Wade had asked her all those years ago, and they had found the answer together. It was not a place on a map, but a life they built side by side, full of respect, kindness, and love. Wade looked up then and saw her watching them. He gave her that same warm smile that still made her heart flutter, and waved for her to come on over. As Zara stepped down from the porch to wrap her arms around her family in the soft evening light, she knew with all her heart that this was exactly where she was meant to be. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.